Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be fixing my wheelbarrow tire, which exploded a few videos ago, and I didn't actually get the event on video, but I really wish I did because it was really loud and pretty funny. But my wheelbarrow tire is an inner tube type. It has an outer tire that just looks like a tire, but the inside is actually an inner tube. So I was wondering why it filled back up, because it went completely flat one time. It's been going flat for years, but it was completely flat and it sunk down on the tire, and it caused the outer rubber tire to bulge out and come all off the rim and everything. And I put an air hose on it and hit it with air, and it just puffed right back up, and I couldn't figure out really why, but it's because there's an inner tube inside. It's not the actual outer tire shell that's filling up, it's the inner tube inside. So I guess I developed a puncture on it at some point in time, and I could never figure out why, but I think maybe what happened is the rim on the wheelbarrow is bent. So maybe some wood or something got inside there, and then as the tire turned around and pressure was on it, maybe there was some wood chips or some metal or something stuck inside the tire, and it was just puncturing it as it rolled around. So we're gonna pull that old tire off. I'm gonna straighten the rim, and then we're gonna try to put the new tire on. And the bolts are rusted on that wheelbarrow because I keep it outside. It's under a cover, but it still gets exposed to the elements. So the bolts are really rusted. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get them off. I may have to cut them off, and my cat's rubbing on the tripod. So I may have to cut the bolts off, but we're gonna go take a look at it. I'll get that rim straightened out and we'll see what happens. Next, we're going to unbox this new tire and see what it looks like. Maybe it comes with instructions. I don't know if it does or not. Might just be a tire in a bag. Okay, so yeah, no really instructions or anything, but there's the new tire. And the inner tube is inside. Here we are outside, and this is pretty self-explanatory. You just got to take the old wheel off. And also a side note, because my tire exploded, you can see the big rip in it, I had to get a new tire and inner tube. I'll post some links in the description for Amazon where you can purchase this stuff, but it is possible to just purchase the inner tube. However, you'll see in a minute, I had a really hard time getting the old tire off the rim. I didn't fight it forever, but you'll see in a minute, I ended up cutting the tire off the rim with some nippers and just cutting it off instead of sitting there and trying to fight it with the screwdriver. A large pry bar set would be a lot better to use than a screwdriver. You just have more leverage in a larger pry bar. But anyways, so it would be possible if you feel like fighting that old tire to get it off. But I think the price difference is only like a few dollars. I think like a tire and inner tube, this was like $11.99, and you can buy just the inner tube for like $7. So you can go ahead and get both if you want. Anyways, this is a simple procedure. You can see the mounting brackets. It's just 4 bolts, and I am shocked that they came off. Some of them were just finger tight, as you can see. The ratcheting wrench wouldn't even turn them because they were so loose. The wrench wasn't needed. You could just back them off by hand.
So, I mean, I was really surprised because you can see the nuts on that are just brown rusted, and I thought that they would just be spinning around and they're carriage bolts and just a pain in the butt, but they came right off. So I was happy about that. No big deal. I mean, if you're doing this, if you're experienced enough and you feel confident enough to change the tire, I'm sure you can figure out what's going on here. So not a big deal. I just used WD-40 to get a little lubrication on them. I don't have PB Blaster right now, but the WD-40 worked great, and I sprayed some on the axle assembly deal where it spins around when I was done. I went ahead and took both sides of that mounting bracket off. I guess I could have just slid that axle rod out of the center and just taken one side off, but because the bolts were coming off, I just went ahead and took the whole thing off. It wasn't a big deal. It took a minute extra to take it all off, so I just did that. Right about now, I'm realizing that this isn't going to be an easy thing just to rip off the rim. There's like I don't know if it's steel belted, I would say, but there is a reinforced ring that goes right around the bead of that rim where it seats in, and it will not move very easily. So I have to take it inside and try to get some tools here. And I start fighting this thing with a screwdriver, and it still is a pain in the butt. I mean, it doesn't stretch well. I mean, you can get one little section over the rim, and then the other side is stretched real tight, and it doesn't want to move. And that rim is sharp, and it's rusted, so it'll scratch your hands. I mean, it's just not an easy thing to deal with. It's really kind of awkward, and it's sharp, and the screwdriver's sharp, and there's a lot of pressure. So it's probably better to have gloves on, because I did put a little tiny cut in my hand. They got me once, but that's it. But I put gloves on here in a second, so you can check this out. Again, I'm realizing that this is a pain in the butt right now, and that other tool is actually a fireplace poker for my fire pit. It has little hooks on it so you can put the top on it and lift it on and off. There's a link to purchase one of those fire pits in my previous video if you want one. But I was just looking for anything I could to try to pull this thing off, and that's actually, a pretty nice looking tool. But again, it's a pain in the butt, and I started thinking I may not even be able to get this job done because I'm realizing how hard this tire is just to get off the rim, and then to get that new tire on the rim with the inner tube intact and straight and not twisted and not puncturing the inner tube or anything is going to be a feat. But you'll see in a minute I end up figuring it out pretty easily.
Okay, so this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, and it's going to be a pain in the butt to get the other one back on. So I'm just going to cut this one off with some snippers here. And then I got to worry about getting the new one on is going to be the hard part. Oh my gosh. I don't know how this is going to go.
that is the reinforced little bead that goes around where the rim seats, and I was squeezing that thing as hard as I could with those nippers, and I finally got it to break, and it still won't come off the rim because the other side is on, so I gotta cut down and do the same thing on the other side.
This torn up tire is that hard to get off? I don't even want to think about getting a new one on. Holy crap.
I'm leaving this portion of the video in real time so you can see how hard it is. If you just purchased the inner tube, be prepared for a struggle to get this thing off.
Yeah. Ooh. Sharp. Okay. There's that.
I'm just going to throw that old tire assembly away right now. But yeah, it just cut my thumb, and that's what I'm saying. It's like a steel belted radial. There is steel braiding inside that bead, that ring around the tire. I'm like, I don't know why this needs to be a steel belted radial. It's just a wheelbarrow, you know, but it's a strong tire that they had on there. Now, they may not all be the same, but the new one feels pretty strong too. Most of that yellow stuff is Fix-A-Flat. I put Fix-A-Flat in this wheelbarrow tire years ago to try to stop it from leaking, and it never really worked. It just kept going flat every few days, and every time I use the wheelbarrow, I fill it up with air again because I have an air compressor right there. But I've been living with it for a long time, and that's what Fix-A-Flat looks like after it's been in a tire for years. Now it's time to move on to the next step, which is straightening this rim. You can see where it's bent. I have no idea how that happened. I guess the tire was flat and I dropped it on something. I don't know, but to straighten this rim, I'm going to use a dolly and a body hammer. I just have this set right next to me in my basement, and it has the body hammers in it, so I went ahead and used the body hammer. It works fine. You could use a regular hammer. And you may not even need a dolly to do this. You could probably just use a hammer, but if anybody knows how to do body work, this is how you really get the straightest edge anyway. So the dolly's the best thing to do. I would recommend backing it up with something and doing a dolly. But I get this thing straight, no problem. This is my first attempt at mounting the tire on the rim, and I tried to put it on just like it came out of the package with the inner tube already inside the tire, and I thought maybe I could just push the valve stem through and then just pop that tire over and it would be good to go. However, that was not as easy as it seems. Having that tire all bunched up the inside there, the inner tube inside the tire all bunched up, I mean, you can't move it easily. But here I used some vice grips to hold the valve stem so it wouldn't move around and pull back through and I would keep losing it or whatever. And I'm trying to just push the rim through and pop it onto the rim, but it does not go well. And like I said, you can't, I couldn't really get it done like this. But I'm showing the whole process here just as I did it. So, I mean, it's a learning experience. I know this video is a little bit long. You can always fast forward if you want and jump around, but you can see that this doesn't really work well, so I have to experiment and do something else. So here we are. I went ahead and pulled the inner tube outside of the tire, and I'm going to mount the tire first. And okay, here's what I wanted to mention. Before I did this video, or when I had the tire on order when it was being shipped, I did look around on YouTube at other people's stuff to see how to do this. And again, I'm not putting anybody down or anything. It's totally fine if you want to do it the other way, but the people that I saw, they put the tire on first, completely on both sides of the tire, and then they used like water with soap in it, like soapy dish soap to spray on it, and then squeezed the inner tube inside of the tire and like went around and sprayed that as lubrication on the inner tube and then stuffed it inside with the tire already on the rim, if that makes sense. I mean, just like in the gaps, and then stuff that inner tube in. But
Really difficult.
that looks really difficult to me. I mean, it's not a big space and you don't want to puncture your inner tube and you're stuffing it inside that rim and there's not a lot of room to maneuver. And also there's water and soap in there, so you're going to end up with water inside your rim. Now, I don't know if that would get trapped and cause rust or anything, but that was another thought of mine, that you're going to end up with a bunch of water inside and you're going to rust your rim out. So here's what I ended up doing. I popped on one side of the tire. As you can see here, only one side's on, and then you have all of this space here. I mean, so it's a nice big wide open gap. And then I take my inner tube and put it in with no lubrication or anything, no water or soapy water, and you can stuff that inner tube in here with all that space. Plenty of room. You can see how much room there is. And again, I use the vice grips to hold the valve stem in place, but you can stuff this right in. And you want to try to get it pretty uniform and straight. You don't want that thing all twisted up and in there. That was kind of my next concern, is that if that inner tube gets inside there and it's twisted and you fill it up with air, it's not going to inflate properly and it'll be a big mess inside there. So try to get it in, somewhat straight and hold your valve stem, and it's simple. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Once I got this inner tube inside and the valve stem secured, then I just kind of went around with a screwdriver and popped the tire on the other side of the rim, and it was a done deal.
Okay, I got the tire on. It really wasn't as bad as I thought. If you have a little bit of muscle, a little frustrating, but let's fill it up with air and see what happens. Max inflation is 30 psi. I'm just gonna get it going right now and get it puffed up. I don't think it's not gonna lose that. See what happens. Oh yeah! Woo! There it is. All right. Nice. I've been waiting to do this for a long time. Let's go put it on. All right, I'll test the air pressure in this shortly with my tire gauge. Right now, I just want to get it on the wheelbarrow and replaced. That's awesome. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was kind of worried for a minute I wasn't going to be able to get that tire on that rim, and I got my rim straightened out. There's where it was bent right there. You could put a coat of paint on this rim, but I'm not even worried about it. It's a wheelbarrow, you know? Okay, let's go put it back on.
Again, this is really self-explanatory. You just put these little mounting brackets on with 4 bolts, and the main thing is you just want to make sure it's pretty close to straight as you can get it so the wheel can spin straight. But I'm not going to bore you with this whole long 4-minute thing. I'm going to speed it up here, and you just tighten it down, make sure it's straight, put a little lubrication on it, boom, you're done. If you look at this assembly, there's all these little bolts holding all the wheelbarrow stand together, and just about all of them were loose. So while I had the tools out and I was working on this thing, I went ahead and went around and tightened up all of them so all the little legs were tight, and I just have a nice firm solid wheelbarrow. But on this last bolt here, it's a carriage bolt that runs all the way through the wood railings there and into the legs, and you can see on the other side this carriage bolt, it goes inside of the wheelbarrow, and it's just spinning around. So this one was kind of a pain in the butt, and I wanted to get this thing tight while I was working, and what I did on this one is I just grabbed it with some vice grips on this side of the wheelbarrow, and that actually worked. I did have to turn the vice grips like horizontal, so I grabbed the whole bolt with them instead of just like the tip of the vice grips coming in. I think I show it here in a minute. But I grabbed the carriage bolt that was spinning around with the vice grips, and I tightened this thing down, and that worked fine. And then I realized that you can just grab the bolt that's sticking out of the nut with the vice grips, and you don't have to worry about grabbing the carriage bolt, because the other side is loose also. And when I tighten this side down, the other side kind of shows that it's loose as well. And that's what I do on the other side. And it's a lot easier just to grab the bolt that's sticking out of the threaded end of the bolt that's sticking out on, you know, on the other side of the nut. You just grab that with the vice grips and use a ratcheting wrench. And if you have all of these tools, it makes it easy. If you don't have the right tools, it might be a little more difficult, but you could still probably get that done. I'll go ahead and speed this up now, but you can see what I'm talking about. I mean, if you're mechanically inclined at all, you know what I'm talking about. You can see the carriage bolt inside there, and I just can't even get a vice grip on that one because it's loose on that side, but there's not enough room to grab it. It's just loose, and it's not really, there's no wiggle room, so to speak. So I can't grab that carriage bolt inside the wheelbarrow there. And what I do is I just come over here to the threaded end that's sticking out outside of the nut and grab it with vice grips, and that allows me to tighten it, because with it being loose, you can't back it off or tighten it because it's rusted and it's spinning around. But when you grab a hold of those threads, that allowed me to just go ahead and tighten it down. So that's all that's going on here. I tightened up all my bolts, and I got a nice solid wheelbarrow with a nice solid leg set up on it, and it's a done deal.